Hey everybody, welcome to Bourbon Branding. My name is Jason, this is Dave, and we have an amazing guest today. We don't normally do this is a first for us, but we are back in the Blind Tiger, which we're really excited about. And we have Dennis Clark with us. He is the owner of the Blind Tiger, and he is a connoisseur of all sorts of things, and
an
also,
expert on many things.
Yeah. And he brought us something incredible today that we could not get our hands on ourselves. So we are very excited to just have a chat with Dennis, enjoy some amazing whiskey, and talk about Prohibition and business and all sorts of things. So without further ado, let's dive in.
Well, you know, one of the holy grails in bourbon is Pappy Van Winkle. He's got a legendary status that goes with him. Now, as of last week, our 23-year-old Pappy Van Winkle is gone. So we do have the 15-year-old. But Pappy, his story...
We'll settle for the 15. We'll say.
It's, you know, and I have not tried this yet. I've tried some 3 or 4 years ago, but... Yeah, and I don't know. We'll find out how good the whiskey is, but the legend's amazing.
Yeah.
With like the story versus the actual product.
Yeah, you know, Pappy Van Winkle was one that was brewing whiskey long before Prohibition-era times. And he's one of the success stories because he got licensed to do medicinal whiskey during Prohibition. So he was legally making and selling whiskey to pharmacies,
That's really cool.
which was prescribed by doctors during Prohibition. So when Prohibition was repealed, he's one of the handful of places that had bourbon ready to go in barrels and just to hit the broad market. So that in itself is the story.
Well, and he was one of the, just a little bit that I know, one of the first guys to basically make a wheated bourbon as well, which was totally different than what everybody else was doing because it was barley and rye and corn. And he kind of branched out against the norm and went with this wheated bourbon. And now today it's one of the most sought after whiskeys.
That was his medicinal spin.
Well, I just think it's an interesting thing because he also ended up with the license to sell medicinally, but he was doing something totally different than everybody else was doing. Everybody was, had a rye whiskey, and he's like, no, we're gonna go wheat, and nobody thought it would work, and yet here we are, 100 years later or more, and we're still drinking. And what I've heard is that it's basically the same recipe. I mean, now it's with Buffalo Trace, and it's all hush hush what the recipe is, but still a wheated bourbon. So
should we get into it?
I mean, I'm.
Do you want to do the honors?
I will do the honors here. So.
Yeah, let's talk out of me, and we'll.
Do you want to talk about the whiskey, or do you want to taste the whiskey?
Oh, I want to taste the whiskey. Yeah.
Well, we'll start with you here.
Oh, thank you.
Now, if I spill this whole bottle...
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Don't.
So what got you into... I mean, you have a very interesting background, but what got you into this space? Like, into whiskey, into owning a bar, into all of... I mean, how did that happen?
It's like most of my life. It wasn't a lifelong dream or a planned event. It centered around just an opportunity, and sometimes it's you jump into the fire and figure out how to put it out later. And I spent 30 years in pharmacy. I owned a number of pharmacies, and then sold my last pharmacy in 2019. And after I sold that, I'm like, what now? I've done a lot of different things, and found myself in a position that this bar was for sale, and I said, why not? I had these visions of working behind the bar and probably watched too many Tom Cruise cocktail movies. But 6 years later, I've never mixed a drink behind the bar.
Yeah.
I find it's.
But you cast the vision, and
I like the vision, and I like the real estate component of it, and the decorating and the creating that. But
the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Should we cheers?
Let's
We usually do one little.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.
It's the first three.
It's really good on the nose.
Wow.
I mean, I get like cherry, some vanilla. I don't know. I'm nervous.
There's proof
I'm
on
nervous.
this.
Wait. Well, I want to dive in. So
Go, yeah.
107 proof.
Okay.
It's a little bit. It's not real hot, but it's definitely a.
Oh wow.
It's fairly smooth to me.
It's really smooth.
For 107 proof.
It's almost got there's a I think it's the wheated. I'm noticing this with wheated whiskeys. They're very smooth from what the ones I have tasted, and the sweet element is heightened on them. It really brings forward some of those almost like maple and almost honey notes. It's really good.
Almost like a caramel to me a little bit.
Yeah, the flavors are so funny. Like everybody can get something a little bit. Like I almost have like a brown sugar.
Yeah.
But I mean, who knows? I don't know. It all. Wow.
It immediately warms you all the way
down.
all the way
Yes.
As it should.
Yeah.
So, your story, like how did you get started in business? I mean, you obviously you own a bar and you own several other businesses now. Like, how did you get started? Like, what shoved you into entrepreneurship in that way?
I think a lot of it's just the way you grew up. I grew up the son of a drywaller, and if you know drywall, it's a tough trade. It's labor, sheetrock. And my dad did his business that way. And I knew one thing growing up is that I didn't want to do drywall. That was the only thing I knew for
You
sure.
want to take up the father's craft.
No, but he did do well in the business side of things, and that's what more than the clinical. Even though I went to the 6 years of pharmacy school, more than the clinical side, the business side always drew me in. So owning the business, running the business, that type of thing. And how I branched out, I've always done building and developing stuff, and that came from my dad. We never lived in a house much more than a couple years, and then we would build and move, and because there was always money in that, you could sell that. And so I just got used to that, and I've been doing that ever since. I was on a job site this morning, so it's just you see something, you get a little bit bored, and a lot of things you jump in that you probably shouldn't, and there's things, I got as many failures as I do successes, so, and that's what happens when you jump in, but, I've enjoyed the ride and still enjoying the ride. I got a few more drinks in me.
Yeah. What's your kind of risk tolerance? So you said you had some successes, some that weren't. Where do you kind of draw the line at an opportunity being too risky, or? Because I think for me that's always kind of an interesting. It's like, I'd love to do this, but it might cost a lot to get into, and the reward might not be there.
Yeah.
Do you have a kind of a threshold or a metric that maybe just a gut feeling? Or?
Yeah, I've always had a fairly low risk tolerance. I've tried to do only projects that if everything went tits up, so to speak, that I could still pay the bank on my own. Whether I had to jump back into pharmacy and, pharmaceutical, back into the business selling drugs, that was always an option for me. And that was needed sometimes during like 2008 and after, when we had the downturn. I had to go back and do pharmacy full time. I probably did that a few times. So for me, the risk tolerance was, can I make my payments if this goes south?
Yeah.
And that really limits your risk tolerance. People that do extremely well have to risk more than that.
Yeah.
they have to put all theirs and bring in lenders. I've tried to do most of it myself with some help from the bank. So smaller projects, 7 to 10 units type of thing.
Have you been tempted to jump into something that you felt was a little too risky?
There's been times where I was on the edge of joining some larger investments, and the reason I backed out of those is because when you get in those larger investments, you're a percentage owner, and when you're a percentage owner, you don't have the say on where to draw the line.
Yeah.
And not having the control was something that took me out of my comfort zone.
You're just kind of at their mercy of...
You're at the mercy of, if it's an investment group, you're at the mercy of the majority stakeholder. And so if you're not that, it's a scary place to be for me.
I feel like partnerships are that way too. I owned a business with 2 other partners at one point, and as great as those relationships can be, the moment you have a different vision of where you want that business to go, there becomes a friction point, and so it definitely can put a damper on that direction. And so having that solopreneurship mind is, definitely for me a comfort zone thing. I really think a lot of what you're saying, though, like young people now, like young entrepreneurs, people who are not sure about what to do next, could hear is sometimes you might fail, or sometimes it might be risky or difficult, or and sometimes you may have to go back to the day job while you grow this thing. And I think we have this rose-colored illusion in America, especially, of like, I'm just going to start this thing and it's going to be really successful and I'll never have to work the same anymore. When I personally, I'm sure you found it's like there's more work in owning the business because you're always on.
Yeah, there is. Or if you're not going to be intimately involved in the business, which I consider this one that I'm not on a day-to-day basis involved, you have to be willing to take a much lower amount of profit, if any, depending on the time. So if you're okay with that, if it has to be your bread and butter, then you better be in there every day.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Has this become more of a passion project for you than like a business? I mean, obviously you want to make money. Yeah. You don't want to lose money, but has it morphed more into a passion, or are you still really pushing it forward as a strict business?
I honestly see this place more of an office than anything. An office for an office for meeting people. And I came to a point in a crossroads in my life where, it was time to meet new and different types of people. I'd been with the same folks for many years in the same industry, and it's been a real blessing that way, because half the people that come in here or more are friends that are my kids' age. So I'm seeing more of that. I knew your son, I knew this son, and again, I've had 7 kids, so there's a lot of people that come through. And it's been very social, and I met my wife here, so.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
It's a good place.
So then you had to buy it.
Yes, yes.
We met at a bar that I own.
Yeah.
And then I bought the bar.
That's a way to invest. So one thing I know I've learned about you, and doing a few episodes here, is this. If we could see this place, you've got all kinds of items from Prohibition, and I'm curious, with your background in pharmacy, how that all kind of transitioned into this, and how did you get into Prohibition-era stuff? It's fascinating. It's like a museum in here.
Well, again, that was partly by accident. When I bought the bar, I wasn't thinking Prohibition. And when I had a couple of pharmacies that I bought, that, my first one was Jacksonville Drug, which the guy prior to me had it 20-something years, and before him, there was just the storeroom full of just old scales and old bottles, and, there was full bottles of opium and all these different things that hadn't been used for 40 or 50 years that eventually we just had to, dump and fill with sugar for decor. But I didn't know the story of pharmacy and prohibition, but since that time, in studying it, the bartenders of the era that were legal were pharmacists. Because during Prohibition, one of the only legal ways you could get whiskey was get a doctor to write you a prescription, go to your Walgreens, which was around that time, or any local pharmacy, and buy a bottle of spiritus fermenti, or medicinal whiskey that existed during that time, which is a great time for the prop to come out.
Oh yeah, there you go.
This is actual empty bottle from 1917 that would have been Prohibition in some states, but it wasn't. It was before national prohibition. But this bottle would have cost you about $150 in today's time, today's money.
They knew what they were doing.
Yeah, so there was like 5 Walgreens at the beginning of Prohibition. There was 500 at the end. So Walgreens and Al Capone, they did fine.
I didn't realize Walgreens goes back that far.
Yeah, 1901.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Talk about a legacy there. And honestly, the fact that rising tide raises all ships, like we're going to sell more alcohol. Walgreens does better. Al Capone does better.
Yeah.
Everyone's happy.
Yeah. Yeah, you look at those bottles, and that one still has a stamp from 1917. That would have been a government-approved form of legal whiskey.
100 proof. So they were getting the good stuff.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, like, so I've heard, I mean, you as a pharmacist, you probably know more. I've heard drugs like common, like hard drugs people do, like ecstasy and everything, kind of started out as medicine. Like people would use them for different medicinal purposes, and then slowly they migrate into abuse and people using them for other things. It's kind of interesting. Alcohol the same kind of way, right? Like we're going to use this as medicine, but in reality, it's a good time, you know, and it's good conversation.
Yeah, there's history on just about every drug that relates to the pharmaceutical industry. You know, LSD is a good example. You know, that was in a lot of studies, and then people started using it outside of the studies, and then it became totally illegal, Class 1 drug, and now they're studying it again.
Huh.
Yeah, if you look at the story, you know, back on the far wall there, I have a pharmacist license of a guy named Cash Davis from Oregon Pharmacy License from 1918. Guy would have been licensed right before Prohibition, so he was a bartender too. And then we have an actual prescription up there that was written during that time for spiritus fermenti, which is medicinal whiskey. So we have, you know, thank God for eBay. You can get all this stuff, the originals, if you're willing to pay for it.
Yeah. Well, as I recall, I think there was only 6 distilleries that were allowed to stay open during that time. And so the fact that we even have bourbon today, I mean, when you whittle it down, when the government, you know, basically makes it impossible to make a profit, and they, you know, and I'm not sure how they picked which 6 necessarily, but the fact that it survived is pretty interesting. And obviously it survived underground in a lot of ways, behind the scenes. But it's pretty, quite the resurgence to today from, you know, 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago.
And of those 5 or 6 or whatever there were that were legal distillers back then, Pappy Van Winkle, I think it was called Stitzer Weller or something.
Yeah, Stitzel Weller, I think,
was a distillery, and that Julian Pappy Van Winkle was kind of at the helm of that. And so we got a Prohibition story right in front of us.
Yeah.
Here. So.
It's pretty crazy. It's pretty,
yeah.
And I think I watched a couple videos on the kind of the modern Pappy Van Winkle product and how they do it, and everything is now produced by Buffalo Trace, and but they are still, so every Pappy Van Winkle bottle gets tested by an heir to the original Pappy, so like the son and then the son of the son, they're
That's
going
really
around
cool.
to each barrel that they choose and actually tasting it before it gets bottled. So I think for them, and it's interesting too because from a business perspective, they were talking about, these have to sit in a barrel for 15 years or 23 years in the case of the 23.
Yeah.
And that's just money. He looked at it two different ways. He says it's money that's just burning if this doesn't work. It was interesting listening to him because they sell these bottles for, they're not that expensive at MSRP, but it's all the secondary where it gets, and he was pretty frustrated but also glad. I mean, in one hand it's like, wow, we're really sought after and it's amazing, but it was neat to hear him talk about, like, we wish everybody could have a bottle. We wish everybody could enjoy our whiskey. We know that's not possible because they only make a limited run. But just that risk reward of putting something into a barrel for 23 years and then really kind of hoping that it turns out the way you think it's going to turn out, and then not just that there's going to be a demand on it, but that it's going to be good. Because if this was, terrible whiskey, then it wouldn't draw the attention. Even you could have 100-year-old whiskey if it's not good. I mean, there's some demand there, of course, because you own the single bottle that's 100 years old. But and I found
the story,
that,
man.
I know. I found that really interesting, though, that they believe so deeply into what they're doing that the risk, although high, is worth it for them. And in this case, it's turned out pretty good, I would say. But
what you said about the MSRP, like being low, that goes to the fact of what we've kind of talked about this, the idea of it's the story that goes into the bottle. There is a bit of a placebo, and our audience may hate this, like we enjoy a variety of whiskeys, and obviously there are good ones, and then we've had some bad ones too. But there are certain instances where if you put several next to each other, for the layman, it would be hard to tell the difference. But you seek after this thing for the story, for the legacy, for what it represents. And it's interesting that they kind of understood that from, like, we're going to make an excellent thing. The MSRP is so people can afford it, but now you've attached so much meaning and depth to this thing. Now it's sought after. It's scarce.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a branding success, I would say.
It is.
And then you talk about the branding success. When people ask about success, if Pappy was here, he might say, oh, it was easy. You just do 80 years worth of work.
Right.
And then it'll come.
Yeah, exactly.
But nobody wants to think that far down. And now Pappy, he did not enjoy the ability to see his bottles go for $4,000 or $5,000 a pop on the secondary market. That he could have never envisioned that.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing.
Well, I've found that researching different distillers and people who, like Frey Ranch is a good example. They're fairly new to the scene, I think 10 or 12 years, and it's they want to get their product out. Now you gotta make a profit, but they watching some videos of them, because they're somewhat hard to get in different places. They're out of Nevada, I think, but they're just trying to make it as affordable as possible for them. They're just a small family, relatively small distillery, but you really get the sense that I think distillers, especially the people who started a long time ago, and you were there 18 hours a day, and you put your blood, sweat, and tears into it, that they just wanted to get their product out to people. And there was a profit that was important, but it was really this desire to bring people around a table and have a conversation. And I appreciate that. I think that's one unique thing about whiskey is it feels familial more than maybe other spirits. You get that sense of like that old-timiness, and I appreciate that.
Focusing on excellence rather than the profit right away. Like, how can we make something excellent? The profit will come, the money is going to come, but we have to make a good product. Otherwise, people aren't going to buy it. I don't know. In your business background, I am curious. I do have a question. Right now, if you had a couple $1 million to just throw into investment in a new business and you wanted to start something new, what would you start right now? What would be something that you would go into?
Boy, I go back to my safety net. For me, it's always been real estate. One of the things that's kept me going in this place is owning the building. You don't really, I'm not comfortable building out a space and putting the money in like we've done without owning that building.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people do leasehold improvements and all that, but for me, it seems a little more like money that's possibly wasted. So, there's people out there much smarter than I. There's tech guys that could take that and quadruple it easy. I do real estate, which is what
But you
I've
like
known.
it.
I enjoy it. I like going from, I used to ride around with my kids and, Dad, are we going to go look at dirt again? So look at places to build and do things. And
So you're the kind of guy that drives down the road and sees an empty lot and starts dreaming?
yeah, or find something, a building that's been vacant for 10 years and like, man, what could go here? The price has got to be low now.
Yeah.
So just those type of things, and you only need third grade math for that, which makes it right up my alley, and just need a little bit of vision, and you need stick-to-itness. You need to be able to see the thing from this clear to the end, too. So.
Nice.
But so yeah, that's a pretty simple answer that has most of your successful people that aren't ultra successful, real estate gets most of them there, and that's where I leave my kids. And if they want to do something that I don't understand, more power to them. So, but
Nice.
I go to the basics.
So, do we have a thought on this?
Yeah, we'll rate it.
You
We'll rate it.
You.
You guys got
Do it-
rating
so,
scales here?
Okay, so it's a 1 to 5,
Okay.
1 being worst, 5 being
Okay.
best. If you would drink it neat or in a mixed drink
Or
on
with
the
an
rock,
ice, yeah,
or on the rocks. So yeah, I mean, I'll go first. So, I mean, obviously I'm going to drink it neat. I'm not crazy.
Oh, is it a daily drinker? Is the other
It
thing?
is a daily drinker. Would you drink it daily if you could? I mean, that's always the the preference. So I'm going to drink it neat, obviously. I mean, it's impossible for this to be a daily drinker because of how impossible it is to get.
Yeah.
But if it was just on the shelf and it was available, yeah, I would definitely drink this daily. It would be a go-to bottle for sure. Okay, I hope everybody doesn't hate me for this, but I think I'm gonna give it a 4. Like I mean, it's delicious, it's amazing. I'll never taste it again probably, and I want to give it a 5 for that. But I gotta be true to like the just my taste
That's fair.
profile, and so I'm gonna give it a 4. Yeah, so I'm sure I'll get destroyed in the comments, but it is what it is.
Take a
Risk
bullet
reward, I
take-
guess. I don't know.
Take a bullet for the team.
All right, Dennis, what do you think? You
Yeah.
go next. What are your thoughts?
Well, I've never scored any of these before, so this is the first time I've been invited in. So I don't know that I can score it. I will say that I would try it both. I would try it neat, and then I would try it. At first, I used to think it was bad to add water to things, but then as I learned more about,
for sure.
sometimes things that are a little hot, you add 1 drop at a time,
Yeah.
then you retaste it, and it opens up different flavors. So I would try it all those ways. I
Yeah.
would try it neat. I would try it on a cube. I would try it with a drop of water.
Okay.
And I don't think I'd drink anything daily because then it wouldn't be enjoyable. It'd be an
It
issue.
loses.
But
Yeah.
but
Well, we always say daily.
Daily.
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think we should drink daily, but
But
Speak for yourself, Dave. No, just-
I would give the things, if I were rating, a 5 because it's not. If I taste almost any whiskey,
yeah.
to me, I'd generally rather have iced tea or Dr. Pepper if I was just saying personal taste.
There you go. Okay.
But the difference is we don't sit over a Dr. Pepper and have conversations. We don't get a
Yes.
little
true.
socially lubricated and talk more. So on that level, I'd give it a 5.
All right.
So
that's a very fair rating, because I do agree with that. I think that there's the 5 as far as just pure taste, and then there's 5 as far as what it offers, the story behind it. So I think that's true too. I would agree. I would go neat with this. Now, if I had a bottle, I might be so obliged to try it on the rocks and try it. I don't know if I would have the. I've watched some expensive old fashions be made, and I'm like, oh man, you're gonna pour that really nice bottle in that old fashioned. So I would probably do it neat. I might try it on the rocks. I've been enjoying that more lately. I would drink it daily if I could afford it. You know, or like the fact, it's not even just the price tag, it's also, can you find it? You know, like, so it's gone. And I think I would give it a 4 too, for just the taste wise. Conversation, I would give it a 5. Yeah. This is awesome. And honestly, when do you get to try something like this? So I would do that. I think not to copy your score. We always say we should have a half score.
Yeah.
We do not have one yet.
Well, you can.
They didn't create the graphics for a half.
We didn't invent those. We didn't.
The budget only allowed for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
But I think it's phenomenal. And if you guys at home don't have a bottle of it and you can find it, this is one you need to pick up and have on your shelf, no doubt, absolutely. So I'm gonna go neat 5 daily drinker, or 4 daily drink, neat 4 daily drinker.
All right.
And I'm gonna. But yeah, if you can find it, yeah. And who knows, if I did have it at home, maybe it would become that 5 because I would have it.
You'd have it, on the shelf.
You can always find it on the secondary market, but it's just exorbitant prices.
A pretty penny,
yeah,
for sure.
But you said that this guy was like, in today's money, like $150 to find this tiny guy on the day.
Well, yeah, during Prohibition time, in today's dollars, they were paying $150 to get a bottle this size, roughly, of medicinal whiskey. And so if you think about the people that were daily drinkers, some by necessity to keep their buzz going or whatever, that created quite a demand for pharmacies that, that was their snake oil, that was their fix-all, that was their cough suppressant. And, some of it seemed to be pretty good stuff from what I can read, because that's the only way they could do it. Outside of, we haven't even got into the illegal ways and the other skirting the law ways of prohibition. That's a whole different topic, too.
I think we need to have a whole nother talk with you and talk about this more.
We hadn't even got into the blind tiger and what that whole story was. The blind tiger was a way that they couldn't sell booze, but they could give away booze if they already had it during Prohibition. So people paid a fee, like a couple bucks or whatever, to see a stuffed tiger. And then they got the booze for free. So that was skirting the law.
Interesting.
And not that the tigers were blind, it's that the revenuers or the officers of the day turned a blind eye to the whole thing, because they probably got a dole on the side as well.
Oh my goodness.
So. Interesting.
I love it.
There's always a workaround.
Well, we need to do this again for sure. This is awesome. Thank you so much, Dennis.
Yeah, Dennis. Yeah, thank you. This is
awesome.
Unbelievable, amazing. Thank you for this opportunity to try this whiskey
and a better conversation. Thanks for the conversation. This is awesome.
I'm looking forward to following all your podcasts. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really helps us out. And until the next one. If by chance you can get your hands on a Pappy Van Winkle, we definitely, obviously recommend it like everybody else.
If you're in Southern Oregon,
absolutely. If you're in Southern Oregon, come check out the Blind Tiger, Jefferson Spirits. Come get a drink. This will probably be on the shelf. You might not get this treatment.
We got some left.
We didn't drink it all. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Cheers.